friends, it's Erica Bankston, and I am so excited already. This is my favorite podcast episode ever because of the guest that we have today. So introducing it, we are going to talk about building legacy, leadership lessons from my dad, who is also the owner of Rick Mooney Construction. Welcome, Dad. We are going to be diving into the heart of leadership with Rick Mooney, owner of Rick Mooney Construction, RMC, as we like to call it, a successful commercial construction company in Arkansas with close to $45 million in volume last year. You have 30 employees or close to it. And Dad, I want you to share your wisdom on leading with humility, building a thriving company with culture, and fostering a legacy of excellence. Guided by the Rick Mooney Construction motto, inspired by Philippians 2:3-4, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of others. This conversation offers practical advice and personal insights into what it takes to lead well. That was a long intro, Dad, but I wanted to be very intentional about what I shared today because, growing up with you, I didn't always know the trajectory of where you were at in your business because you just are a very humble person. And I know you're probably cringing me even saying that to you right now, okay? But the importance of sharing kind of the metrics of where you're at in your business is because I know there are so many people out there who would love to be where you're at right now. And I think looking back, especially when I started my business, I was looking for people like you who led the way that you do to really try to emulate them. And so I want to just kind of share you with my friends because you have so much knowledge. And Dad, welcome to the podcast. First of all, cheers. We've got we've got a little cup of coffee going. That's a black coffee. I think I was probably trying to be like you, liking black coffee. But welcome, Dad.
Well, it's always a great opportunity to spend time with my daughter.
Thank you. I'm so excited. One of my favorite things about this season in my life is getting to do so much with you. Getting to build the office together was so much fun.
Yeah.
And I guess we see each other about every day now, which is the dream.
I love it.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
But Dad, tell me, do you remember when you first chose that motto? Because I remember thinking, whenever you and Mom started printing that out on things, or talking about it, all of the get-togethers and holiday events, you would talk about your motto. Mm-hmm. And what made you choose the motto for Rick Mooney Construction?
Well, I think, of course, it all comes from a Christian perspective.
Yeah.
Okay. And my Christian faith is everything to me.
Yeah.
And I feel like that I'm so unworthy.
Oh, Dad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, see, here we go.
Listen, it's so funny because we're in this season of life where almost everything is emotional because we get to do life together and because God has just been so good. And sometimes I've been where you're at, where you're sitting in that seat. I can't imagine if I was looking at Ellie, Shiloh, or Call, and you get to look across from them and think, well, I did something. Yeah. I did something where they're looking at me and thinking, wow, Dad, how did you do it? Or wow, Mom, how did you do it? So,
well, I'm so blessed with having three of the greatest kids in the world. And they're all leaders. And that's special for me. But, my company's not always been successful as it is right now.
Yeah.
We've had some hard times. And especially, I look back and, I think everybody has a story of 08 and 09.
Yeah.
The period that you...
Tell us a little bit about that because I love when you share that with me because, man, that was a time where you really just had to trust God. So tell us, just start with that story.
Well, 08 and 09 was a time that everything was going great up to that point. And in fact, I kind of explain it this way. It's like we was doing a lot of land development at that particular time, as well as building a lot of commercial buildings. And at that particular time, everything you couldn't develop a piece of property that it wouldn't sell instantly. We done a land development up in Northwest Arkansas, and we had about 80 lots in the first phase, and everyone was sold, and every lot was sold. And so I made the worst decision that I think I ever have made, and that is I started the second phase. But why would you not? Everything made perfect sense. Why would you not start second phase? Another 100 lots. But we hadn't closed out on the first phase, right?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, and here's a lesson to learn as well. Your mom did not have a good feeling about it.
Yeah.
She said, I don't really understand, but I don't feel like we need to do this next phase. But, why would you not? You had every lot sold, and it made perfect sense to do it.
Yep.
And so at that time, I just made things happen. When you start out in business and you build a house, and then you sell it, you then build another house, you make things happen.
Yeah.
And in that period of my life, it was like, well, I'm making things happen, and it made every sense from a business sense to do it. Yeah. So, we started the second phase, and we're in the middle of the second phase, and I explain it like this. It's like a fire hydrant was going full blast one day.
Yeah.
And the next day is someone shut it off completely. And I'll never forget, we had the first phase, we started closing out lots in the first phase. And a partner of mine was Keith Mars, great guy. We started closing out the first, I think, 10 lots of the 80-something lots. We closed those 10 out. We were set to close for the next 2 or 3 weeks the rest of the lots out. And that next day, we get a call from a couple of the builders and clients that was buying lots. And they said, we just don't feel comfortable right now. We think we're going to kind of wait a little bit before we close out our lots.
Cool.
Yeah. So from that point, we didn't close out any of the lots at all. And not only did we now we have about all the lots but 10 in phase 1. Now we're in the middle of phase 2.
Yep.
And we've got to finish it.
Yeah.
And so it was a period of time that was very hard on the company, on the family. And I think that was a period that really I turned everything over to the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I said, Lord, this,
feels impossible at that point.
It seemed impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, the interest alone that we was paying didn't seem possible to even pay it.
Do you mind just because I think it matters sometimes to share some of the details. Do you remember how much it was in interest? Do you mind to share that?
Well, it was it's about $150,000 a year.
Oof.
Yeah.
That's mind blowing to me, looking back and thinking about. Of course, I was a child and I knew it was bad, but there's no way that you can really grasp that.
Yeah.
And one thing you and Mom did is you really didn't concern us kids with financial. I mean, we knew we saw that it was you having serious conversations, but it wasn't wasn't something we really knew about.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's when really God put me on my knees.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when, I really, I told the Lord, I said, I'll give this company to you. And now you're in leadership of this company. And if it makes it, it's going to be because of you.
Wow. Yeah.
Not me.
Yeah.
And it's been amazing. I look back now honestly, and I do get emotional. I'm sorry, but
No,
it's how Dad is.
same.
But I'm emotional because I know what God has
Oh,
did
yeah.
for my company
Yeah.
and for
Yeah.
my family.
Yeah.
And I just turned it over to the Lord.
Yeah.
And I look back now, and I'll be honest with you, I really, I can't tell you
Yeah.
how we got through that.
Right.
I don't know. It's just when time, we never had to file bankruptcy or anything like that. God
Yeah.
always provided.
Yeah.
And
It probably felt like a daily provision than
yes.
because I think that's one of the things to know as a leader is, there's so many times that you're at crossroad decisions like that
Yeah.
or moments like that.
Yeah.
And not only is it scary, but God requires us to just get up and go for that day.
Yeah.
He doesn't tell
That's
us,
right.
oh, Rick, it's going to be next year, you're going to be okay, or
No.
the year after that. You know?
That you're right. I'll ask you this question, okay?
Yeah.
So in construction
Mm-hmm.
and building, what is the most important thing on that house? What's
the foundation? I would say, yeah.
And I'll add to that, a solid foundation
That's good.
is the most important thing, right?
That's good, Dad.
So for me, my company, the solid foundation is the Lord. And
That's good.
That's he leads our company. And I have been blessed with an amazing team of guys.
Yeah.
I've got a group of guys that are like-minded, like me, And I think one of the great things about being a general contractor, even more so than, like, say, a subcontractor.
Right.
As a general contractor, that allows you to set the attitude of your job. Okay? And so I hear it all the time when I go out on one of my jobs. I'll hear someone say, we just love working on your jobs.
Yeah. I hear that all the time.
There's no cussing.
Yeah.
Everybody are, they're just friendly and they're fun to work with.
Yep.
I remember one time I stopped by one of my jobs and this plumber that I knew real well was there, and I knew he wasn't working there or wasn't supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, well, what are you doing over here? And he said, your job is so peaceful.
Wow.
He said, the job I've been working on, there's just turmoil all the time. And he said, I just wanted a place to rest and eat my lunch. And he said, I came over to your job.
Wow. That's so cool.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah,
And so that's
cool.
the environment that we've been blessed at RMC to create is, and I tell my guys all the time, I said, you have an opportunity to share your faith. You take the time and do it.
That's awesome.
Because that's what, that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, that's right.
And for RMC, for us, it's, and I tell all of my team, it's God is first. Your family is second.
Yeah.
And then your job is last.
That's good.
And, that's really, that's what we work for.
Yeah.
That's why you do the things you do.
Oh, yeah.
It's your family.
Yeah.
And so that's what's been special about our company.
That's so cool to hear from your perspective, Dad. And I want to give a little bit of my perspective too, getting to watch your team. And of course, Cody, my husband, works for you, it gives me a little bit more insight, because he has got to experience that at your leadership, and Cody is he loves his job. He also loves the people he works with. And, it's cool getting to just step back and see the way that people see you, right? And I'm sure the perspective I have is even different than Cody's or other people's, but I hear often, people want to make you happy. They're motivated to impress you, I guess. And the reason I share that is not to brag on you, but to give a little insight to everyone watching, because as a leader, what we study, because I'm young and I need all the leadership advice that I can get, and I look for it. And one of the things I look for is just when I see someone who's admired and respected, that I want to know how did they get there? Why do people respect that person? And I would just say, I believe, and I'll take it back a little bit further, Dad. And this is going to be uncomfortable for you. I know a lot of it will be uncomfortable just to hear, but I remember being really young. And one of my favorite memories is going out on the job site, and you would take all of us kids, and we were homeschooled most of our life, and we would be the ones to clean up the job sites, and you made it a game, but I never could sweep as good as you. And you would lovingly just show me again and again and again. But one thing I learned is my dad requires excellence, but not just from the people around him. He requires it from himself. And one of the things I wanted to point out was, this was back in the day of, when you became a builder, you did a lot of it yourself. I mean, I remember you framing. I remember you up walking around on the top of the roof. Yeah. You did a lot of it yourself. Tell everybody how old you were when you built your very first house.
Oh, wow. Well, of course, my dad was a contractor as well, and built a lot of houses. Yep. And he always taught us boys to work.
Yeah.
And I don't ever remember not working.
Yeah.
I started trimming closets, when I was probably 7 or 8.
That's correct. Yeah. That's Paul's age.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird to think about?
That is.
Which, pause for 1 second. That is so sweet to think about, because you just got called a ton of tools.
Yeah.
And, I was kind of thinking from the perspective of, well, it's going to be a few years. But Dad's over here thinking, well, he could trim out closets right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to get all my grandkids. They're going to all have tools.
That's awesome. So you were 7 or 8.
Yeah.
So then where did it go from there?
Well, and then, one thing that my dad, he allowed me to work with all of the subcontractors. Yeah. So I did do a lot of framing, a lot of things. When I was 10, 12 years old, I was walking walls.
It's crazy.
And I think that has helped me as a contractor. There's not a lot of builders that have actual builder experience. Yeah. They've been in the business and they understand the business, but they don't really, I love it, when I'm around framers that said, well, we can't cut this roof in because of this or that, right. And I can say, well, okay, let me show you how to do it.
Yes.
And
I've witnessed this a lot. I love that you have that experience.
But I was probably, my first house, I think I was 15, actually.
Yeah.
My dad, he said, I want you to build a house.
Yeah.
And he took me down to the bank, got me a checkbook.
Yep.
And I was about 15 when I built actually my first house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me, because, I think that's something, if you're a parent watching, I think we strive so hard in this culture to allow our kids to be young. And what that looks like to us is, well, you don't bother them with hard tasks, and you don't make them work a hard job when they're young. And, one of the things I would argue is I feel like we're stunting the growth a little bit with the next generation, because there's so many awesome lessons that they can learn just by learning how to work hard at a young age. And Dad, I remember, the same things that you learned from your dad, you taught me. I remember you taking me to the bank. I was older. I was 18, probably, maybe a little younger. And there was a piece of property. I wanted to be just like my dad. And so step one, maybe buy real estate. If I can't build a house, I'm going to buy real estate. And you took me to the bank, and you made me have the conversation with the banker. And you told me how important it was to go ahead and establish those relationships and, to save my money. And so we did. I bought my first lot at a young age. And you also taught me how to write a check. I don't know if you remember that, but I worked for you, and you let me write checks. And So just those little things, I feel like so many kids, they don't know how to do those basic things at a young age. And it really does prevent them from getting to a certain place a lot younger in life, you know?
Yeah.
So I love that. What else can you remember that when you were younger, do you think that, well, let me ask you this, Dad.
I did become a good sweeper.
You did.
I've
never seen anyone, maybe, you know who's probably out of the kids, because, you know, there's 3 of us. Shay's probably the best sweeper.
He probably is.
He probably is.
In fact, I had someone tell me the other day, they remember when he was working in Mountain Home, and he was just sweeping everywhere. So, yeah.
That's one, you were like, you can sweep.
I think that's the reason he decided to get out of construction.
He was like, I feel like maybe this isn't, because if you were sweeping all day, that would not be the most fun.
Honestly, if there's anything I love doing more than anything on a job, and I still do it when I can, I love to go sweep my jobs.
Yep.
You know,
I catch you all the time. You're just, matter of fact, we have a video from last year where, if you know my dad, he cannot stand a dirty job site.
Oh.
And I just know, I can see his face. Like if we walk in and so he wants to sweep it so bad. You want to sweep it so bad, you know, get that thing clean.
But what it does for me, really, I think it shows my team that I'm no better than they are.
Yeah.
I wouldn't ask them to do anything that I don't want to do.
That's good.
And that's where the humility, I feel like, comes in.
Yeah. Not
to try to act like you have humility, but to share it and to show it.
To be willing to do those things. And Dad, that to me has been, I think, one of the biggest lessons for me. I'm gonna tell on you a little bit, but you know, one of my favorite things about my dad is you know, the older that we've gotten, the closer that we've gotten. And Dad now, the other day walks in and he just brings apple ciders for everyone. He's like apple cider Santa, and he's just walking around giving everybody apple ciders, and it's so sweet. And but Dad, you are a servant leader, and that is, you know, I'm gonna tell off on myself just a minute, and you've probably seen this in me. I wasn't always that. You know, Cody and I have had a couple of ventures before the Heritage Group, and one of them was an office supply company. And I remember having the attitude, and this is embarrassing, this is vulnerable to talk about, but I think it's important to talk about because it's never too late to ask the Lord to create this in you, you know. I remember feeling like if I wrote someone's check that I didn't have to do every single thing like they did. I wrote their check, they should do the job.
Yeah.
Right? And you learn, it's a hard lesson to learn because the hard part about it is not being a servant leader. The hard part about it is coming face to face with the fact that you are very wrong in your thinking, and it's arrogant and it's entitled. And, but you know, I looked at my dad and I was like, I want that kind of respect. I want people to look at me like that and really feel that way about me as a leader. You know? And so I had to really break down my own heart and ask the Lord to give me a new one, to create a new heart in me. And the scripture talks about that. Search my heart and create a new heart in me. Right. And so thank you for that, Dad, because, you know, it is where peace comes from. When you learn those things and you do it God's way, peace is there.
Yes.
And joy is there. The fruits of the Spirit.
Oh,
you know, when you allow Him,
that's right.
His way's better, you know?
Well, I've always, you know, tried to, you know, teach you guys that it is definitely a more blessing to give than to receive. Mm-hmm. And that's what I see it in all of my kids. They do. They're so generous in everything. And, you know, that's when you know that you feel successful as a parent, when you see your kids like that. And you, Shay, and Gabriel, all 3 have such a great heart to give.
Thanks, Dad.
You know, and, you know, I'll share a story that about tithing.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm a big believer in giving God his,
That's good.
And I remember, and it's been several years back, but I remember, and it was really not too long after this period of 08, 09, we was just barely getting through. And I felt like that, or I not only felt like it, I knew there's a certain amount of money I was going to have to make for that year.
Yeah.
And I was praying. I said, Lord, I've to make it this year, this is where we've got to be. And I felt like the Lord told me, he said, well, then you need to give your 10% for that amount. And I said, well, Lord, I don't have that. He said, well, I really felt strongly about it.
Wow. Yeah.
And I talked to Mom, and we made a commitment to tithe almost double what we had because we needed double more, okay?
Yeah. Wow. So you put that into practice.
We put it
just
to practice.
Just to be clear, you did that right then.
We did it right then.
Before you knew that was going to take place. Wow.
So here's the great story. We did it, and God blessed and blessed. And that year I went to do my taxes, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I get emotional.
That's okay. That's awesome.
Yeah. And we did our taxes. I really didn't even know because as a self-contractor, it's not like you get a check
right
every week and it's this amount and that.
It's kind of a surprise to us too at the end of the year.
Like, did I make any money?
Yeah.
Or how much did I lose this year?
Yep.
And so at the end of the year, we did our taxes. My accountant done the taxes. Said, okay, this is how much you made. And I looked at that and I thought, wow, that's amazing. I can't believe that's. Wow. We made that much. We did so good.
Yeah.
So I go home, and this is the honest truth. It was it was the exact amount that I had tied 10% of.
You're kidding.
The exact amount. I mean, I'm not even talking about $1 difference.
Wow.
Isn't that awesome?
Doesn't it? That's so awesome. And isn't it? Dad, let me ask you this. From the perspective, from the Christian perspective, business perspective, but also a Christian perspective, did you expect that your business life would be probably the one thing that was the biggest testimony to the fact that God exists when you started? Because I know from what you're saying to me is like, I feel like I could never tell you after moments like that there isn't a God.
No.
It's moments like that you recount in your life. And there's just no way that God doesn't exist.
You hear of miracles and you see miracles. Yep. I have. I've seen a lot of miracles and heard of a lot of miracles. But when it happens to you personally, and it affects you personally, and beyond a shadow of a doubt that there's no way that could have happened.
Absolutely.
And I don't know, just something about a personal miracle.
An encounter. Like an encounter.
That it affects you.
Absolutely.
In a different way.
It does. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that because, and that's part of I was hoping that you would share these things, Dad, because they have changed my life as well, getting to watch you and Mom live it out. And that, they talk about your ceiling being your kid's floor.
Yeah.
Have you heard that before?
Yes.
That's how I feel. I feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of people who have had the faith to walk it out, and it makes it so much easier for me to see and believe because I've seen it. I've seen it walked out. It's a testimony of faith.
Yeah.
I want to keep going. I know we're, I don't even know where we are time-wise, but I do want to keep talking about some things. But I want to talk a little bit about who Rick Mooney is and Mom as well. I'm going to have her on one day. But I want to also share that from a perspective of being your kid, I've seen a growth in you, which I think this is so cool because as a leader, we should always, Mom calls it lifetime learners. We should be lifetime learners. We should never get to a point where we think, man, I've made it. Whether that be a dollar amount, whether that be, a status, a position, we should always be looking for growth. And one of the things I see in your leadership is you constantly desire growth and you put people around you. You've never been afraid to put great minds around you, people that know things. And one of the things you told me, put people around you that know more than you about things, right? Yes. That is a huge lesson that I've learned from you. But in doing that, I think that I've gotten to see so much growth in you, Dad, not only in business, but personally. And one of the things I'd like for you to share a little bit about is your barn meetings, because this is just kind of a peek into the growth that you've had on the personal level. And growing is remembering your business isn't everything.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've had so much success, but at the end of the day, what I've seen is what you're most passionate about is sharing the Lord.
Yeah.
And so tell everybody what, God called you to and what you do on one Saturday a month. And you can share your Wednesdays too if you want to.
Well, so Daryl Kirkland works, he's one of my team members that's been with me a long time.
Yep.
And so me and him together, it felt like the Lord wanted us to start ministering to men more. And so we started it actually at my barn, Natural Dam. We've done it for 11 years now.
Has it been 11 years?
11 years, and I don't think we've missed maybe 2 or 3 times the whole 11 years.
Wow.
It's always the second Saturday of every month. And we just felt led for guys that don't go to church or that don't want to go to church, uncomfortable going to church, just in the community there that just, and our heart was to have people to kind of speak at, just share their story of what God has done in their life.
Good.
And not necessarily from a preaching standpoint, but just guys that have had a rough life and what God has done for them.
Yeah.
So we started doing that, and it definitely has changed me even personally because God, I feel like that's a calling that God gave us, and so it's we now. We started with a few guys. Now we normally have from 50 to 75 guys that come, and we've had a lot of guys that it's changed their lives.
That's so awesome.
And so it's been that has been amazing. And I think for me personally, what's really changed for me, even through all of that, is just a personal relationship with the Lord every day.
Yeah.
Spending time alone with God every day.
Yeah.
And that probably has affected my life more than anything.
Yeah.
Is that time with the Lord. Because I was brought up in church. Okay. My dad was a PK. I mean, I'm a PK.
Yeah.
My dad was a preacher.
Yeah.
So I've always been in church.
Yeah.
But I never really had a personal relationship with the Lord until probably 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is it's not about just praying and say a prayer and say, okay, God, I want to turn my life over to you.
Sure.
It's about making a change in your life. And it's about living that life daily.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And that's, again, through the 08, 09, God put me on my knees, and he gave me a personal relationship with Him.
Good.
And that has, and I've got the sweetest wife. You have the best mom in the whole world. Okay,
I definitely
do. And she is my rock.
Absolutely.
And I can't even think of of even being in business without her, because I know she's there for me.
Yeah.
I'm maybe what you call a workaholic.
Yeah.
And I think I got a daughter that way.
We're very similar in that way.
I think I've got several kids that unfortunately, I think they got that
gene
from
passed
their dad.
down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We enjoy what we do, for sure.
Yeah. It's been, so yeah, my barn meeting has been my passion for the last several years.
I've loved to see that, Dad, too, because, the Lord, our whole, and I've said this, when starting Heritage Group, Justina and I, we do look at this like a ministry. We get to be around people and love people and lead people, and so But what's cool is you wanted to facilitate something a little bit more. And I love it because I've heard so many people that come out of that have said what it means to them, how much it means to them. And unfortunately, people have been hurt in church, and there is a group of people. I mean, church is wonderful, beautiful.
Church is great. I love my church.
Absolutely.
So it's nothing negative.
About church.
Yeah.
But everybody has, a specific way that they perceive things. And it's just another way to allow people to share. Can anyone come to that?
Absolutely.
If there's anybody out there, that
it's always the second Saturday of
Saturday of the month,
and it's at Natural Dam.
And it's at Natural Dam,
we provide a meal, and I never want anybody to give anything.
Yeah,
we
free meal before.
Free meal.
It's pretty epic, amazing. I've heard too. Homemade.
Yeah, we have a great cook up there.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
so I love that, Dad. That's so awesome. Let me ask you a couple fun questions. Is there anything that you see me doing as your kid and you're like, oh, that's me? When you see me in business, do you ever see anything and you're like, oh, that's me?
Well, it's definitely not talking, because Dad's not blessed with that. So you definitely are better at that.
No, I don't know about better, maybe more.
I think, what I see is you're a workaholic.
Yeah.
You need to shut it down a little bit quicker.
It's so funny because I was actually sharing this with someone the other day. I said, it was actually Justina, and I said, I think Dad has identified that in me. And so he wants to, I'll be working late and he'll text me, are you still at work? And you definitely, and you'll give me about, twice a year, you give me the talk, whether you realize it or not, about what's important. Like the kids are important, Cody's important, make sure that
it took me too many years to realize that. So, yeah.
Let me ask you this, because this is one thing I really love about your company. Going back to the motto, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. One thing I love about that first portion is what it tells me right off the bat is that RMC is not just about making Rick Mooney, wealthy or taking you to a certain status. You are constantly looking at ways to position your team for growth and success, and you involve them in the decision making. Tell me a little bit about what that looks like and why you do that. Because some people, they would say, only I know the direction this company should go. And, I've built this business, so it's going to be me at the top. Share a little bit of your heart with that.
Well, so there's two kinds of leaders. There's leaders that have followers, and then there's leaders that have leaders.
Ooh, that's good.
And I feel like that our company has got leaders. Because if you've just got followers, your followers will only expand your business to the point where you still have all your hands on them.
Can you maybe text that to me, since I can't take notes right now? That is so good.
But a leader is someone that they bring other leaders on. And then you can turn that over to them.
That's
and you
good.
trust those leaders to make the decisions. That's why it's so important, the people that you do hire, that they have your vision, but they also, have the ability to lead other people.
That's really good.
So
That's so good.
And RMC, I think, has some great leaders.
Yeah, you really do.
We have, I think, I would put our leaders against anyone.
Yeah.
My only challenges sometimes is everybody tries to steal my leaders.
That's true, Dad. You develop, you have great, I see it. There has been people who have come up to me and just said, how do I work at Rick Mooney Construction? And that says a lot, that there are actual people out there that their entire goal of their career is to work at RMC. That's awesome. That really says a lot about the culture.
Well, we've been blessed with just some great people to work for. I mean, we really have.
Yeah, you have.
Just, the college has allowed us to do a lot of stuff, over around the college at the new research center, the nursing homes that we've got involved with doing some nursing homes that just a great group to work with. We've had, I don't want to name names because I would miss someone out.
Yeah, sure.
But we've got so many groups that we're working with that has just allowed us, and they've trusted in us. And that takes, I feel like that's, that takes years to build those relationships. Sure. But to me, that's the success of RMC now, is the relationships that we have built that's allowed us to do the work that we do now.
Yeah. That's so awesome. Is there any other advice? I see that you have some notes there. Is there any other advice that you have to people who are looking to you and they're saying, man, I want to lead well? And, I think to recap, one of the things that stood out to me, Dad, was, first of all, listen to your wife. Okay.
Listen to your wife. That's right.
Her husband.
You got it.
No, listen to those around you that the Lord gives wisdom to, because he does. He gives our spouses wisdom. Thank God for Cody. Shout out Cody. But then I also heard you say, to tithe. Yeah. And for those of you who don't know about that, or maybe you have paused that and you think I can't do that right now, I would encourage you. There's so much proof in my own life.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much proof. And when you give God, it's all God. So when you give it back to him, he's going to give it back tenfold. And it's just proven over and over. Yeah. Another thing I heard is lead by example, serve, choose to serve. And it's not just a mindset. It is action that you take. Yeah. It's being intentional about, for me, what that looks like is a little bit different than it looks like for you sometimes. But I do try to be intentional about doing nothing being too small of a task at any certain point, leaders, not just having followers, but leaders have leaders. That's probably my favorite takeaway of the entire podcast, but to give you some more space.
Well, and to be, be a good listener.
That's a good one.
So I would say leaders that don't listen will eventually be surrounded by people that don't have nothing to say.
Oh, truth bomb. Repeat that again.
So leaders that don't listen will eventually be surrounded by
people who have nothing.
People who have nothing to say.
Ooh, I wish I had my notes. That's good. I've experienced that, honestly, at different points when, and I would liken that to if you're at a space where you like to surround yourself with yes men.
Yes, that's right.
Right?
That's right.
Because, you know this, but I married the most opposite of a yes man that you could possibly ever marry, okay? I married someone who challenges me, but not in a negative way. He challenges me to grow. He challenges me to be the best that God has, called me to be.
Yes.
But I like that, Dad. And, I've noticed that even at this age, when I don't have a lot of wisdom to give, you make it a habit. You'll come and sit down and you'll say, I want to ask you about something. And I'll give you my 2 cents, But one thing I've noticed is you don't just you mean that.
Yes.
You mean that when you
Yeah.
come and ask me or, the others around you, you do. It's not just listening. You really do want to know.
I think that is one of the true signs of a good leader. Um, I have one of my best friends is Ray Riley.
Yeah.
Okay. And one thing I love about Ray is if something comes up, then I'll ask Ray, like on a job that needs to be addressed or something, and I'll ask Ray. I'll say, Ray, how do you think we need to fix this? And he'll come up with some of the most simple answers.
Yeah, practical.
But it's practical, and it's like, wow, that's it. That's what we need to do.
Yeah.
So I think that it's important as leaders that we ask those on our team, what's their thoughts? But when they share those thoughts, then you move forward with it,
Right?
And
That's good.
Give them the credit too, and not.
That's a good one.
So
that's a good one.
Pretty
Do
exciting.
you ever remember a time? Because my whole life, I remember you being wise, to be honest with you. But I was reading in Proverbs, I believe it was Proverbs 4 this week. And at the beginning of the year, I always try to read Proverbs because it's just, there's so much wisdom.
Yes.
And I'm a simple-minded. I have to have actionable wisdom for my life, that I can really chew on through the day. And one of the things I read is the ways of a righteous person. And they get brighter and brighter. The path becomes brighter and brighter until full day. And I was like, wow. In my mind, I think that's how it feels sometimes being a young leader, right?
Right.
But the Bible says, cling to wisdom, chase wisdom, always be pursuing wisdom.
Yes.
And when you do that, it's such a good visual because things just become obvious. They become clear,
Right.
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 And sometimes when you're in the beginning of it, it does feel dark and you think, how in the world am I going to get to this point?
Right.
But the more that you allow wisdom, Holy Spirit, to guide you,
that's right.
You get to a point where I look at you today and I think, because we'll not get till full day until heaven. There's going to be things we're always pursuing, but that's what I'm hearing from you is, that your experience got you to a place where, man, I can see this is, I'm going to tell you as a new leader, Erica, these are the things that I've learned are principles that you can apply in your life.
Yeah.
Was there ever a time that Rick Mooney was without that wisdom? Was there a time that you, like with me, where I had that ego of nobody can tell me anything I don't know, or did you always kind of have that personality where you wanted that input?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I think that's something my dad taught.
Yeah.
But on the other side of it, I think it's natural for you to want to make things happen. And so when you try to make things happen, then that's when you think you know the answer, then
that does make sense because I think that's in me as well, where I just want to make things happen. And when you do that, and I think so many people will be able to relate with that.
Yeah.
When you try to make things happen, the things that the opportunities it takes away is the pause.
Right.
That pause and thinking, okay, Lord, this is our goal. This is where we want to be. How are we getting there?
Yeah.
And that's something you've taught me in the last several years is a posture of every time I drive to work, my mind will start focusing on what are the things I need to do.
Yeah.
And it becomes a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
And what I've put into practice after hearing from you say constantly, this is not my company, this is God's company.
Right.
I'll be driving and I'll say, Lord, what are we doing today? How are we doing this today?
Well, I think one of the things that has really affected the Christian perspective is people that don't do what they say that they'll do, but yet they try to act like that they're
high character.
Yeah, and that they use Jesus and they use Christianity as their selling tool, basically.
Like a marketing ploy.
It's their marketing tool, And I'm not against anybody using a fish sign, okay?
Right.
But a lot of people that have tried to use Christianity and pushed it into their business just as a promotional deal, I think that has hurt Christianity as much as anything, because who wants to be like them?
That's good.
And so that's why I'm always real careful of pushing Christianity on anyone.
Right.
But let your life show that.
That's good.
And people will see it in you.
Yeah.
That's how you. That's how they believe in you.
That's good, Dad. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up. I want to just say to you, I think what we've talked about today is leadership does not have to look perfect. Dad and I both shared how leadership in the beginning for us, and I say this from a very, like I said, inexperienced place, but Dad has many years of experience. Leadership does not have to look perfect. You're going to go through things that are a little bit unexpected, right? But if you can trust God and you can look to Him and you truly look for growth and you from a place of humility are willing to self-evaluate and bring other leaders around you, you're going to do well, and you will make it. If you're in a hard season right now, we've been there. And when you see people who are at the place that you're at now, many times we don't see every other step that came before. Right. And so, Dad, thank you for being willing to share that, all of those steps that came before. I know there are many, but...
Erica, I'm so proud of you.
Thanks, Dad. I love you so much. One more peek, okay? Key to being a good leader right here, I'm convinced, is to show them, Dad. Show them what you carry around everywhere, okay? This, to me, is the symbol of leadership. Is your black book. Dad carries this since I was little bitty. That black book. It wasn't that exact one, but there's always been a black book, and I'm convinced that's the secret sauce right there.
It makes people think you know what you're talking about.
I'm telling you, I've always wondered. I've gotten a peek inside there a couple times, and usually it's just a bunch of numbers and also sketches.
Yeah.
I also have a black book now
cool.
that I have. Yep.
Good.
Yep. So I'm carrying that tradition on, but man, thank you so much for joining us today. Dad, I love you. I'm going to try not to cry, but thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with me today. And we'll do it again.
Okay.
Love you.
Love you.